Good morning. Today we're talking about massage modalities and which might be the best fit for which client, how to decide what it's worth learning and investing in that education to be able to provide all these different types of massage. So I want you to really think about what you usually do and what the basis of your massage approach feels like based on who you are as a practitioner and what you have to offer clients. And then we also think about what clients we want to attract, what kind of energy we want to have between ourselves and the clients. That helps us organize all this. So it's a really big topic, massage modalities, and it's something that I've been getting asked about a lot. Like, how do you pick a massage modality to learn? So let's first kind of just understand the difference between different types of modalities and the purpose of having all these different modalities. So when we're intaking a client, we're really wanting to be clear within ourselves and have clear communication with us and the client of whether we're seeking to address a rehabilitation type concern or if we want to generate overall relaxation. So if there's a specific area of the body that is really challenging, then we want to pick from resources and techniques that help us circle more directly around that. Whereas if we want to address the overall need for relaxation, we might have a different approach. So Swedish massage is the most widely recognized massage approach in the world. It's the basis of a lot of other structures to kind of drop in specific techniques on a Swedish framework. And what I love about Swedish, which I think is like actually very underrated, is that it provides a systematic approach to go through each layer of tissue of the body. And this is really important. It allows us to focus on what's going on with the skin and to drop through into what's going on with the fascia layer underneath and address the lymphatic system and into the deeper layers of tissue all the way to the bone if that's what you're trying to work on. So it's possible to give a very deep massage with Swedish. I'm talking mostly to practitioners here, so you probably already know this, but when you're working with Swedish style, you have this layout of the body that allows you to mentally kind of tick through which approach you're trying to use at a given time. So you're keeping track of this is the time in the session when I'm working on an arm and I'm working on the skin of the arm and then I'm working on the fascia and then I'm working on the lymphatic system. So I think that it's really great to help us organize, but really most of us are trained with a little bit of a lackadaisical approach to Swedish, and so we might not be getting the full benefit out of that technique. However, that is the basis where most of us are given first access to massage therapy. I practice in Hawaii, where actually many of the schools nearby and really accessible to people incoming into this field are being trained in Lomi Lomi, which makes for an interesting contrast. I'm from Washington, and so I learned a very basic Swedish education that was pretty thorough. Here, a lot of the students that I work with actually leave school with like very little exposure to Swedish approach. So that makes for an interesting dynamic. But Lomi is another style that is fairly systematic in terms of it can vary a lot depending on the traditional lineage that people are trained in, but it also gives that mental format of like, this is the sequence of when I go to this body part, and helps organize what's going on in the course of the session as a basic framework to work off of. So either of those, Swedish or Lomi, is a great place to start in terms of building a session and going from the whole body approach, zooming into a narrower focus as we approach each of these different sessions. And then it's also cool to think about, important to think about with your clients as you're reading them, that you can integrate energy and the energy connection in some modalities more so than in others. So I am really interested in integrating all the different energy approaches and like the way that people do that. It's pretty fun. But it's not totally necessary if you're working on a more rehabilitative focus. So those are things to keep in mind, the framework and then what's going on with the energetic of the approach. And all over the world, we've generated all these different approaches that are specific and regional and carry on the cultural traditions of different areas. And so massage therapy is a super ancient healing art, right? We have this handed down traditions, and it's something that you really have to learn in person. I mean, it's great to grab a few techniques from a YouTube video, but like if you've never touched somebody before, just watching on YouTube and translating that into your practice is going to be a little challenging. So in the West, we really were given a relatively limited tool set, and so that's why a lot of us end up practicing Swedish. And in the India subcontinent, we have like a lot of different varieties of Ayurvedic practices. In Eastern Asia, we have some like really proliferated approaches: Thai massage, Ashiatsu, Shiatsu, and these can come out of like a wide range of different fundamental theories about how massage works and what you're trying to accomplish with a massage practice. So when we start assessing what modality to apply, the number one thing to keep in mind as practitioners is, what are you trained in? Like, if we are offering clients the highest level of service possible, we want to narrow ourselves down to modalities and techniques that we understand how to apply them, and we get why they work, so that we can extrapolate and produce the results that are more predictable. So number one, consider yourself on target when you have been fully trained and reasonably educated in the modality that you're applying. Number two, we want to be super tuned into the information that we gather before we start working on the client. So the intake forms can really reveal a lot of information if you use paper intake forms, especially if you have those ahead of time, being able to review that and start gathering, narrowing down what the client's best outcome would be, and figuring out ways to target your work to the needs of the client specifically. So you're going to check in about stress levels, sleep quality, and injuries. All of these things are going to give you little tabs of information to keep track of what's going on with the client's energy, what's going on with any pain in their body, and how to narrow down your treatment style based on that. Also, communication is a huge important factor interacting with clients. I think scanning mentally over my entire practice over the last 6 years, building up from like absolutely zero to like $10,000 months, the thing that stands out as the mistake that I would correct early on is just client communication. Like, if they don't understand what you're about to offer, that makes it very difficult for them to feel satisfied in their expectations. And the difference between expectations and experience is actually a cause of stress for people. And so that's when you have the situation of somebody who maybe actually has more tension getting off the table than when they get on. That can happen to anybody, because some clients are just going to regulate themselves in a way that is not well aligned with your approach. And we really have to allow that different clients need different therapists. Not every massage therapist is going to be a good fit for every person. That's totally fine. I've had a few of those cases where the person just had something going on in their mind that was not inside of my scope to address, and that can accelerate tension or confusion. But we get ahead of that by communicating as clearly as possible, being really specific of whether you're trying to do a remedial type technique that's addressing a specific pain and why you're doing what you're doing, versus if you're really focusing on the nervous system and activating the parasympathetic system and trying to dial in the overall healing activity of the body. And so letting clients know and understand what you are trying to do with your body work can make such a big difference in how comfortable they are with the modality that you've chosen and the overall results of the session. And we're going to be totally adaptable throughout the session. There's no reason to be locked in mentally. It's smart and I think really confidence building if you do create a mental framework of how you're going to approach the session, even spatially laying out in your mind what order you're going to go in as you're approaching the limbs and the back and the neck and the head, how you're going to format that. It is really great to take the guesswork out of the process. But once you get going, you most likely will find things happening in the body that you didn't expect, that the client didn't know how to communicate to you. And it's totally fine to adapt to that as long as you're verbally or non-verbally clear in your communication, so that expectation doesn't get bounced in the client's mind as well, because we want them to be able to be in deep relaxation or to be like fully in trusting acceptance of the body work that you're providing. So my next big concept is how do we go about expanding the modality toolbox? So I have a bit of an issue with some of the advice that's given broadly out there, which leaves us with the impression as therapists that maybe we don't have enough clients because we don't have the right modality, that we don't attract people because the specific classes that we took are not in demand or whatever. I think that this is like a bit of messy thinking that comes from the way that the industry is set up and the incentives that exist for us as instructors to generate courses that are like attractive and purchasable for you as massage therapists, education consumers, basically. That like, of course, instructors are going to have to put on their brochures like you'll increase your income potential if you add this modality, right? But as massage therapists scanning all of the possibilities out there and thinking about like what class am I going to take next year to meet my continuing ed requirements, the sensation can be that I need to add something that is like really unique and different. Unfortunately, that's just not how the market works. The clients that are out there are very rarely exposed to whatever is the new, interesting modality, and it's actually a lot more difficult to attract and sell people with an offering that doesn't resonate with anything in their history or their prior experience and understanding. So I think that actually acquiring many modality approaches and exposing yourself to that variability is like wonderful for keeping your energy and engagement up as a therapist. It's a lot lower than you would expect in terms of attracting new clients and holding value that way. Like putting on a brand new inventive modality on your business cards or brochures or whatever is not going to be as high impact as the class brochures would lead you to believe. Does that make sense? However, if you have multiple certifications and multiple modalities that you've mastered, you're probably going to be able to reach for reasoning that sounds resonant with your clients. You're going to have an easier time mapping the treatment session in your mind and re-navigating depending on what you are trying to do. Re-navigating based on what you're attempting to accomplish with the clients. So I think if you're looking at selecting modalities, probably the modalities that make the most sense on a client-facing exposure, like your business cards, your brochures, are going to be the modalities that you were trained in school. That if you learned Swedish deep tissue, some myofascial, like really keep that in the front and center of your offerings for your clients. And then with existing clients that you already can email, you can send newsletters to, that's where you have the opportunity to explain the value of new or experimental modalities that you've required more recently. So don't think that you have to run around and get a bunch of different modalities in order to show clients that you're the person to come to. Switching between styles and having a variety of styles to choose from can also be really beneficial to you in terms of reducing the strain on your body. That if you're using one modality all the time that is dependent on a lot of use of the elbows or a lot of use of the thumbs, then being able to mix that up with applying a different modality, getting a different angle, a little bit different physiology for yourself can keep your body safer and higher functioning in the long term. It's also more mentally stimulating. And so I do encourage people to keep always adding to your toolbox and acquire more tips and tools as you go through your career. If you ever feel like you're stuck in the routine or like you're doing a session and you're kind of bored, like that you're not able to focus and be deeply present with the client because what your hands are doing is so repetitive that it's a struggle to stay engaged, that's a really great time to add a new modality and to scan the options of what's available in your local hands-on continuing education offerings. And when you have developed your own really specific style, this allows you to build a sense of connection with clients, returning clients who are likely to associate you specifically with the experience that they want from massage. And over years of working with the same base of clients, you gradually teach them what is so special about the massage approach that you have to offer. You also give them the opportunity to explore and give you feedback as you acquire new offerings in your modality skill set. So this becomes a special feature of your relationship with your client that allows you to nurture that experience over time and give them more sense of options, autonomy, and control over how their sessions are going. So I have experienced a lot of different modalities and I enjoy experimenting. I enjoy getting shown a new technique, having a chance to try it out, and I really love sharing the techniques and approaches that I use with my students. However, I always just give the caveat, there are so many programs out there that ask you to believe that a certain modality is like the end all be all, that if you learn this one modality, you'll be the most attractive therapist and all the clients will want to come to you and you'll get the perfect results and it'll be so amazing. But underneath all of the hype about any specific modality, the real difference between an intensely credible practitioner who gets the results that they're aiming for every time is the practice of presence, is the actual experience of knowing the body and the human body generally, mapping that to your own body and experiencing your somatic experience on a deep enough level that you can predict the somatic experience that you're producing for your client. So once you get that dialed in and you're able to maintain very clear present awareness, very strong prediction of outcomes in the micro experience as you produce a sensation, the client responds to a sensation. This is where really high quality massage happens. And the specifics modalities are incredible, But if you can't maintain that presence, if you can't maintain the mindset of awareness of the client's momentary experience, it doesn't really matter what modality you're using, you're just not going to get the strong results through any rote practice or any repetitive action. So that's my whole commentary on massage modalities. I don't teach a modality. I don't have a special course, and I probably never will. I've had some people ask me, like, why don't you teach your specific style? And like, it sounds kind of fun, but honestly, I just don't believe that's how modalities work. I don't think that it makes sense to teach the hand shapes as though they were the most important part of the work. And so I really focus on teaching presence and awareness and practical embodiment for the therapist so that we have that to share for our clients. And I encourage you to filter any advertising material for modalities that you see out there through that lens, because that's where it's going to make the most difference for you. Thanks for hanging out. I'm Adele Lefevre. It was really nice to meet you. If you want to hang out again, please hit subscribe so you'll get a notification. Have a great Sunday.